Hi everyone, it's Kim from the Shamrock Quilt Studio, and today we're going to do something a little bit different. I want to talk to you about one of my scrappy quilts, and it is hanging on the wall behind us. I haven't given this one a name, but if I had to, it would probably be Scrappy Diamonds. And let me tell you a little bit about this quilt. I started this quilt probably in 2020. The idea came to me to do this. I had previously done a Scrappy Grandmother's Garden quilt that I finished in 2015, and I really loved it. It was one of my favorite quilts to cuddle up on the sofa. It's very soft. It was a white background and it had all pastels in it. And while I liked it, I still had a problem because I had a lot of scraps, and the scraps that I had left were not particularly the pastels, because I used a lot of pastels that I had in my stash, but I also bought some pastels for that grandmother's garden. So what I had left was primarily very bright colors, and you can see that here. We have some pastels, no doubt, and we have some old fabrics here, some very old fabrics. And what I wanted to do was bring them all together to create something. Now, when I look at this in the monitor on the screen, which is really about that big, it looks like just a mass of little colored spots. But when you come up close to this, what you'll notice is these are hexagons. And I had hexagons already. I didn't have to buy any, I don't think, because when I made this, it's all hexagons. The borders are hexagons, or the sashing is hexagons. The only thing that's not a hexagon is right here on the edge. I've taken those gray hexagons and appliqued it onto a strip of a matching fabric to get us a straight, solid edge. And that was just easier for me than trying to deal with that uneven border with the EPP. But there's all kinds of fabrics in here, and if you'll indulge me just a little bit, I want to take just a couple of them and tell you about them. Most of these are 100% cotton, but there are some in here that are not. And let's pick out some. And what I find, this fabric right here is probably 35 years old, and it is a blend, and it was originally purchased to make a clothing item for my daughter. So that's very old. Then we have fabrics like this little piece symbol here. It was a fat quarter from Walmart that I picked up for another purpose, and I had a little bit left over and I used it for this. Now, if we look a little further into this, there will be some other fabrics that were purchased that never got used for anything. It's just like this one here. So it's just been sitting there. And then some other fabrics that were purchased for other quilts that there were extras left. I have some in here. This is a Spider-Man fabric that I made some goodies for some little kids in the family. There are fabrics in here from, again, 30 plus years ago. And if we look into this, you can see there's some fabrics here from another quilt that I'll be posting in the next few weeks or a month or so. There are fabrics from a quilt I made for my grandson. And what else do we find up here? So many. Geez, so many. This one right here, this one came from that other Grandmother's Garden Scrappy quilt. So we were able to take the pastel here and integrate it into all these fabrics. Interestingly enough, there are a couple in here. There is, can you see that one? A little blue fabric here that Joann's made a pink and blue fabric that were exactly the same pattern. They had a little white printed on pattern with hearts and kind of vines. And I've used that pattern in 2 separate quilts in both the pink and the blue. So some fabrics you just like and are drawn to more than others. I have a quilt that uses this fabric. I have a quilt that I gifted with this fabric. Just so many things. A grandson's quilt here in the green. And was there anything else super special here? Just a lot of different fabrics that were extras. This is the extra. The only thing that I think I purchased for this quilt is the gray fabric in the sashing and the borders. And then the back of this is just plain. It's just kind of a beigey gray color that was very neutral and felt right for this. I will tell you, this is a very heavy quilt. This quilt is heavier than the Grandmother's Garden. So it is a great quilt for the sofa in the wintertime when you need a little more weight, a little more warmth. Whereas the Grandmother's Garden is great for spring and summer. So you have to sometimes think about how you construct a quilt and what that's going to mean for washing and the weight of the quilt, how warm it's going to keep you, because most all of my quilts use the Warm and White from the Warm Company as their batting. Occasionally I'll use the Warm and Natural, and there are some older quilts that have a polyester blend, but everything in the last, I would say, decade or more has been the Warm and White, or a Warm brand batting. I really like this quilt. Like I said, it's very heavy, especially for the size, because it's not a bed size quilt. But when you do EPP, because you've got a lot of the face of this is double fabric. Every time you fold under these edges of the hexagon, you've got double, and then right next to it you've got another one that's double. So it's a heavy quilt. It's a heavy quilt. I really like it. Now let's talk a little bit about the pattern. When I started doing this, I knew I did not want to do another hexagon Grandmother's Garden. It needed to be different, because although I was using the same shape, I definitely wanted it to be a different look. The other thing that I was thinking about when I did it was I wanted each one of these little diamond shapes to stand on its own. Therefore, it would have a dark color, light color, it would have lots of patterns, it would not necessarily repeat a fabric into that diamond. And then that allowed me to use this diamond wherever I needed it in the quilt. And the distribution of the reds or the blues or the oranges or whatever color it was all over the quilt. So you don't look at it and see, oh, that's the red section or that's the yellow section. It's all mixed up. And I think that that's one of the things that makes this work, is that there's no pattern. The pattern is there is no pattern other than this diamond shape. That's a lot of scraps, and I don't recall exactly how long it took to get this together, but it was not a quick project. I have a little bit of an update on how long it took. It looks like I started making the hexagons in late October, early November 2020. And if you remember that time, that was the time we were all sequestered in our homes a lot. And I do remember that. So I started making this, and then towards January, February, I was putting the diamonds together, and it kind of evolved from there, and I just kept building on it. That's about the time that we moved into our new house. So it took a little longer than it should have, and then it was finally finished, I would say, middle to 3/4 of the way into 2021. So for an EPP, it really came together pretty quickly, but I think that was driven by the fact that there weren't a whole lot of other things to do at that time. Just about everything was closed down or very limited, so being at home having a project to sew on was a great diversion. This quilt is about 54 by 74. It's a little wide, I would say, for a sofa quilt. If you were just one person wanted to cuddle under it, it's a little bit wide. It's perfectly length, but I like it because when you fold it and lay it over the back of your sofa, it covers a lot of area, so it really makes a big impact. And when we first moved into our house, about the time that this was finished, the house when we moved into it was almost completely painted gray. So there was a lot of gray and a lot of dark. And as we started bringing things into the home as far as furniture and incorporating what we had, everything was that neutral color palette. And having something with a big splash of color was exactly what we needed. And like I say, we don't use it all the time, but in the fall, time is great. It's a lot of color. And also I think in the winter time it's a good thing to look at because it does have that color. You've got lots of bright things. You've got lots of neutral and delicate kind of things, bold, a little mix of everything. And as I'm looking at this and really trying to think of all the things that were made from this, it's really amazing because this one, it was a costume for my son when he was 2 or 3 years old. And it is definitely a blend. You can tell because of the way it's still very puffy in there. It doesn't have the inward, ways that the cotton does. See, this is cotton and it's shrunk up, but the thing goes in, and here it puffs out because it just doesn't shrink as much. If you've got any experience with how those two fabrics differ when they're washed and dried, I think you'll understand what I'm talking about. But lots and lots of old things, old fabrics that really didn't have a purpose. They sat and they waited and they waited and they waited for a perfect vehicle to come along to show their beauty. And we use this, it's probably only been washed half a dozen times because it's dark, it doesn't show dirt. It's not really exposed, it's not really exposed to a lot of wear. But the wear it receives is light wear. Adults, no pets, things like that. So we don't really have to worry about it getting dirty so much. It's just it gets used and it's dusty and it's time to refresh it. But that's a good little visit with this particular quilt that is a scrappy quilt. And from time to time I like to do a scrappy quilt because I like to kind of keep my fabric in check. I mean, it can grow to a point where it's overwhelming. So I wanted to just share this with you. I know we've looked at it before, we talked about it, and I think I even showed it a bit when we talked about labeling quilts. And the label to this is right over here in the corner. And it's upside down, but it's got my initials and a date that it was finished on it. But another example of what you can do with your scraps. And I hope that this is an inspiration to you. Hey, a little something more. Now, we talk about this quilt and how it is an EPP, and I want to just take a minute to talk about its quilting. It was quilted entirely by hand, and what I chose to do was come in here and only quilt along the outside of the diamonds. So in the sashing or the path here, there's quilting on 2 sides of most hexagons. Sometimes there are 3 when they meet up at the top. But that was just enough quilting to meet the loose requirements of the warm and white. I think theirs is 8 to 10 inches. And from tip top to bottom of these diamonds is just at 10 and a half inches. So knowing how it would be used, that seemed like it was appropriate, and it has held up really well. I've seen no problems with the batting moving or not holding its shape. And from the back side, then you can see in these areas where the path is, you can see a heavy amount of quilting and then a blank area where each of the diamonds is. And that's really good. And then there is not a quilting at the edge of these hexes here. There's only the quilting at this point. So it's like you have something special here, but not on the back. I wish there was a better way for you to see that. If you like this video, give us a thumbs up. Be sure to subscribe and maybe even consider a membership to support the channel. Thank you so much for joining me today, and we'll see you next week at the Shamrock Quilt Studio. Bye.